On the evening of January 23, 1897, Erasmus Shue, a blacksmith in rural West Virginia, was tending to his fire in his small shop. He called out to his 11-year-old helper, who was cleaning in the back, to go to his home and check on his wife, Zona. Erasmus had intended to leave early, but a last-minute order for horseshoes meant he had to work late. He wanted his helper to inform Zona that he'd be late and to assist her if needed. As the helper left, Erasmus's thoughts were on his pregnant wife, Zona, whom he had married only a couple of months earlier. Despite Zona's family, particularly her mother Mary Jane, disapproving of their relationship due to the age difference between the two, Erasmus was 35 and Zona 23, they had quickly fallen in love. Zona, known for her dark hair, dark eyes, and quick wit, had grown up on a farm and never traveled far from home. When Erasmus moved to the nearby village of Lipses Mill to open his blacksmith shop, they instantly connected. Despite Mary Jane's objections, Zona's determination led to their marriage in November, and soon after, Zona became pregnant. However, complications arose, and Zona often felt unwell. The couple decided to wait before announcing the pregnancy. On that January evening, Erasmus worked fervently on the horseshoes, eager to return home to Zona. Meanwhile, his helper had arrived at the Shue residence, knocked on the door, and, receiving no answer, entered the house. The home was dark, and the helper's calls went unanswered. Especially knowing how active Zona was known to be. Turning a corner, the helper found Zona lying at the foot of the stairs, unresponsive. Panicked, the helper ran home and told his mother. Judging by how shaken the boy was, the mother sent him to fetch Erasmus while she went for the doctor. It took almost an hour for the doctor to arrive. By then Erasmus had returned home and was found cradling Zona's lifeless body, sobbing and stroking her hair. The doctor, familiar with the couple due to Zona's pregnancy issues, gently asked Erasmus to step aside to examine her. Confirming Zona's death, the doctor suspected pregnancy complications as the cause. The next day, Zona's funeral took place at a local cemetery. Word had spread about her pregnancy, and attendees observed Erasmus's profound grief. Before Zona's casket was lowered, Erasmus decided to place her favorite scarf inside, said his final goodbyes, and closed the casket. However, it was Mary Jane's reaction that stood out. She glared at Erasmus with pure hatred and left the funeral without speaking to anyone, ignoring those who came to pay their respects. Following Zona's funeral, Mary Jane's behavior grew increasingly strange. She refused to answer the door when neighbors brought food or checked on her. At night, she stayed up, with candles burning in her bedroom, pacing, and sometimes kneeling and staring off into the distance. When she did leave the house, she appeared disheveled and distracted, mumbling to herself and constantly looking over her shoulder. Neighbors who approached her were ignored as she hurried away to wherever she was going. Mary Jane's husband did not discuss her odd behavior but began sleeping in the barn instead of their house. On February 21st, about a month after Zona's death, Mary Jane emerged from her house. Looking composed, well put together, and with a determined and angry expression. She marched to the local prosecutor's office. When she arrived at the prosecutor's office, instead of following protocol, she barged in, demanding to speak with the prosecutor. The prosecutor, familiar with what had happened to Zona and with Mary Jane's recent strange behavior, was curious and agreed to meet with her. Once in his office, Mary Jane started to tell him this bizarre story about her deceased daughter, Zona. Mary Jane explained to the prosecutor that during Zona's funeral, her overwhelming emotion was hatred for Erasmus. She despised seeing him receive sympathy while she grieved for her daughter. As she fixated on her hatred for him, she felt something was terribly wrong and believed only Zona could explain it. After the funeral, she hurried home, knelt in her bedroom, and prayed for Zona's ghost to appear and reveal what was wrong. For the next month, she obsessed over summoning her daughter's ghost, praying constantly and searching for signs of her presence. One night in mid-February, while praying in her candle-lit room, a bright light appeared, making the room cold. She believed that this was her daughter's spirit. Although the light vanished quickly, she felt encouraged and intensified her prayers. Over the next 2 days, the light appeared twice more, each time briefly. Initially, the prosecutor thought that Mary Jane had lost her mind from grief, losing her daughter who was just 23. But somehow, he continued to listen to her story. On the fourth night, the light reappeared and did not disappear. Mary Jane saw her daughter step out of the light, dressed in black with pale skin, dark eyes, and straight hair. Terrified, Mary Jane backed away as the ghost approached. Knowing that that was the result that she was looking for, being able to talk to her daughter's ghost. She forced herself to ask, "How did you die?" Zona's ghost stopped, opened her mouth, and dirt poured out. In a raspy voice, she revealed that Erasmus, who appeared kind to the community, was abusive behind closed doors. On January 22nd, the night before Zona was found dead, Erasmus became enraged over dinner. He wanted meat, and Zona had made something else. Despite her attempts to calm him, Erasmus went nuts, and lifted her by the neck. As Zona's ghost described the scene, she looked terrified, as if reliving that moment. The ghost levitated, and a loud crack was heard as her head twisted around, with her body still facing Mary Jane. The ghost dropped to the ground, her head now facing backward. She turned her body, her head oriented towards Mary Jane, and smiled. Before vanishing, she said, "Now do you see what he did to me?" The room warmed up, and Mary Jane, exhausted, wept. And the next morning, Mary Jane got herself ready and rushed to the prosecutor's office to tell him about her daughter's ghost and how Erasmus had throttled her, leading to her death. After a couple of hours of listening to Mary Jane's story, the prosecutor began to see a certain logic in her claims. His suspicions grew, and by the time Mary Jane finished her tale, he was convinced of its truth. He decided that Zona's body needed to be exhumed for a re-examination. The prosecutor approached the local doctor, who had treated Zona and examined her after death, and persuaded him to help by explaining Mary Jane's story to him. The doctor agreed. The next day, February 22nd, a group of men, including the prosecutor and the doctor, dug up Zona's casket from the hilltop cemetery. They brought it to the local schoolhouse. Zona's body was still well preserved due to the cold ground. They placed the body on a table, and asked everyone to leave. The doctor and the prosecutor began the examination. Within 30 seconds, they both noticed the same thing that Mary Jane had described. They looked at each other in astonishment, realizing that Mary Jane's story must be true. The doctor then recalled how Erasmus had stayed at Zona's head during the initial examination, cradling Zona's lifeless body, sobbing and stroking her hair, possibly to hide her neck. Erasmus had also placed a scarf around Zona's neck at the funeral, allegedly her favorite, perhaps to conceal the marks. When they exhumed Zona's body and removed the scarf, they found marks resembling fingerprints on her neck. Further examination revealed her neck was dislocated and her windpipe crushed. Erasmus was arrested for Zona's murder shortly after this discovery. At Erasmus's trial, Mary Jane testified about her daughter's ghost revealing the truth. Her testimony was so persuasive that the jury found Erasmus guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison but died 3 years later from a mysterious illness that spread through the prison. It was also discovered that Erasmus had been married twice before Zona. One wife had divorced him due to abuse, and the other died in a freak accident involving a falling brick while helping him fix a chimney. Today, a plaque near Zona's burial site in West Virginia commemorates the case, noting it as the only known instance where a ghost's testimony helped convict a murderer.